A lot of the purpose that I gained in my life came from times of crisis. So if you're feeling some type of way, like lost or unsatisfied or unfulfilled, just know that you are headed to something great.
Welcome to Empowermente, the headquarters of personal empowerment.
Hola chicos, welcome. Welcome to Empowermente. Empowermente is the headquarters of Latina Empowerment, and I'm so excited to be recording the first episode ever. If you're here, I don't take it for granted. I want to say thank you so much for supporting me, and I'm so excited to bring you on this journey with me. Let's get started. So today I'm going to be talking about a few different things. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, then how I ended up creating this podcast and why I'm here. And to end, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what I'm hoping for you. Mi nombre is Gina Moreno, Gina Elizabeth Moreno, and I am a first-generation Mexican-American from El Paso, Texas. And I feel like it's so important that I mentioned that I was born and raised in El Paso because it's so unique and so different than many other places in the US. If you are from a border town, you get it. You literally grow up with two cultures, and it's so wonderful. El Paso is home to beautiful mountains, to the nicest people, and it's home to the second largest military base in the United States. I grew up to two parents from Ciudad Juárez, Chihuahua, and I didn't meet my grandparents. I actually only met one of them, but it turns out that three of them were actually from Zacatecas. And I actually don't know too much about Zacatecas, so that's one of my aspirations, to learn more about Zacatecas in the next few years. About my education, I went to the University of Texas at El Paso. I had the commuting university experience, and I am an engineer. I studied industrial engineering for my bachelor's and systems engineering for my master's. I graduated at 21 with my bachelor's and 23 with my master's. I became really passionate about advocating for women in STEM fields because coming from El Paso and going to places like Missouri, like Indiana, was a huge culture shock for me. Through my internships, I learned more not only about my career, but about my passions. I interned for Northrop Grumman, for Cummins. I did research with Lockheed Martin and Toyota. I actually lived in San Antonio for a few months. So through these internships, I also learned my love for travel. I moved around a lot, and I never really stopped traveling from that point forward. I started working at Microsoft in 2019, and I started as a technical account manager, then moved on to being a program manager for 3 years, totaling my time at Microsoft for 4 years. And I lived in Dallas, but then I discovered remote work. After living in Dallas, I actually started a nomadic lifestyle with a home base in El Paso, Texas, but I moved from El Paso to New York for a few months. I lived in Seattle for a few months, and my favorite part of all was living in Mexico City for a few months. Who am I from my heart? Who am I without those accomplishments and labels of who I am? I am an adventurer by nature. I love to travel. I love to get to know new places and meet new people. I am super attuned and aligned with my spirituality. I am a person who loves sunflowers, who loves the beach, who loves cats, and I am a person who loves emotional music. Some tangible things are that I am in Phoenix, Arizona, and that I am engaged to the love of my life, Mr. Jose Andres Mesa. And I think that pretty much covers who I am. I am a woman who is purpose driven. If you cannot articulate or explain what is the purpose behind what I am doing, I literally will not have any motivation to do it for you or anything at all. I am also diagnosed with ADHD, and I do suffer with general anxiety. It has gotten a lot better in the last year, but it's something I'm still working through. I want to say that 2020 was one of the most defining moments of my life, and the reason why I'm here today. In 2020, even before the pandemic started, I was already going through my own mental health journey. I was new in a city, and it was my time of transitioning out of college, and it was a very difficult time. But it is a time that I started so many of my journeys, including my healing journey, my hormone health balancing journey, my spiritual journey, and so many other things that shaped what I'm doing today. But a lot of the purpose that I gained in my life came from times of crisis. So if you're feeling some type of way, like lost or unsatisfied or unfulfilled, just know that you are headed to something great. Let's talk about Empowermente. Empowermente is the headquarters of Latina Empowerment. And I want to share with you the 3 pillars of what I'm going to be talking about in this podcast in general. The first one is empowerment and personal growth for primeras. As a person who is a first generation Latina, I had to navigate everything by myself, from education to corporate, to business, to emotions, to relationships, and it is not easy. So I hope to create a space where we can talk about healing generational trauma, building generational wealth, and all the things about self-growth and personal development, but from the lens of a first generation Latina for Latinas. Second is entrepreneurship and the unspoken words of corporate America. I learned a lot during my time in corporate, and I want to share my learnings, but also tell you what I'm learning in business and how these two come together, and a little bit more tangible tips of how to do well and how to overcome those limiting beliefs in those areas. The third one is lifestyle and life transitions. A lot of my audience are people in their 20s and 30s. This is a time of big life transitions, and it's not easy to adult and figure out who you are and self-discover. So I'm going to touch on those subjects as well. Lastly, I want to share why and how I'm here. A lot of the things that have happened to me have led me here. It would be true if I were to tell you that I was exactly in the right place at exactly the right time. But a better description of the reason why I'm here is because I have been led here. It is my belief that every single experience that I had has prepared me to be where I am today and talking to you today. All these experiences in my life perfectly align to be here. And more than wanting to be here and wanting to quit my job and wanting to be a podcaster, creator, entrepreneur, it feels like the universe and my spirit guides and love has guided me here. And I am a person who listens. I didn't used to listen, but I listen now. That is how I'm here. If you want to hear the more tangible story, I could, but to simply put it, I felt that my unique talents, experiences, and gifts were just not being used. I felt like I was wasting my time. Although I had a great salary, which I earned my first year about $95,000 all the way to $165,000, it was just not enough. Like, I literally felt like my soul was dying. It is the simplest way to put it. And if on top of that you add the less than ideal experiences that I lived with my manager, with my team, it just made me feel overall like I didn't want to do that anymore. And I'm gonna give you a few examples of how those times of difficulty and crisis have led me to doing what I love and being so in my purpose and doing things out of passion, which is where I'm at today. Let's get started. In 2017, I had my very first internship, and if you've been following me for a while, you know that this is a milestone that pretty much marked the following years in my life, because I had an internship in Warrensburg, Missouri. That's where I lived, and where I worked was called Whiteman Air Force Base. White Man Air Force Base. So as you can imagine, the town was very white, and I was in a complete culture shock. I was like, oh my gosh, I understand why there is so much advocacy for women in STEM, and I understand why there's so much advocacy for Latinos in STEM. It was very, very intense time where I felt like I understood my place in the world as a minority. Yeah, I just felt so small. And it didn't help that my roommate was from a very good school. She was from Rice University, and she was just educated in such a different way. You know, I would go every weekend to her house. She is the daughter of a doctor and a higher education professor. So the conversations that they had really changed my brain chemistry in making me understand how I was raised. So I think part of my crisis started happening at that time. But since I went through that time and I understood that I made up 2% of the Latinas in STEM, I ended up giving a TED talk about it because I became so passionate that I knew so many things about not only my experience, but the universal experience of being a woman in STEM and being a Latina in STEM. So that's the first experience I have for you. And I'm gonna go through a timeline of my story, and you know, I think at the end you'll be able to put the dots together. In 2019, I started my first job at Microsoft, and I come from parents who were not college educated. They both had blue collar jobs and they tried their best to guide me. However, they weren't really informed as to what type of careers I could do and what would I do with those careers, right? So I was sold that if you got a job in an office, it would pretty much fulfill all the dreams that you had, and I pretty much worked for that my whole life. And not to say that it is not a privilege to have those type of jobs, because I think when you come from a minimum wage background and like doing physical labor, of course working in an office is the dream. And given their perspective, people who worked at the office were like the bosses and they were living the dream, right? That's what they had exposure to. So they had this belief that unconsciously transferred to me. So I was sold on this American dream of getting a job in corporate America, not only by them, but also by recruiters and engineering school, about how everything was going to be great. And I didn't feel happy when I accomplished this dream. And a lot of my friends know this. I tell this story often too, that when I entered in corporate America, I literally thought, like, I worked all my life for this. Like, this is it. This is the American dream. And again, it's a very privileged position, but in my own right, it was not the dream that I thought it was gonna be. I remember that I talked to my friend Matthew Robles about it. I don't know if you're gonna listen to the podcast, Matthew, but shout out to you because you were my best friend when I was a technical account manager. And I was in such a shock the first couple of months. And not to say I didn't enjoy many parts of it, but you know, multiple emotions can exist at the same time. A part of me felt very lucky, very proud, very passionate about being a Latina in STEM. But there's another part of me that also felt like unfulfilled and like I was let down by corporate. I literally had a quarter life crisis starting at 23 years old. And this is when all those journeys that I talked about started. And I remember that even before COVID started, I was already going through a trip, y'all. So let me see if I can find it.
I remember I was going through it, and I had one time that all my emotions just exploded. And I wrote them down in the notes app. And I mentioned Matthew because I showed him this note and I felt so vulnerable and stupid. But I actually still have the note, and I'm going to read it to you, just so you understand where my headspace was at in 2020.
Let me see. Oh my God. So I actually found the note. It's from March 20th, 2020. So it was like right as it was being declared a pandemic. And oh my gosh, if you're on YouTube, you can see how long this is. But I'm going to give you a glimpse of what it says. I just don't feel good. No puedo hacer nada. I've tried to do these things all these days, but I can't do them. I don't want to do anything at work because I have to, but even then, like, I'm not very productive. I just want to sleep. I think I was spiraling. Like, I don't want to say I want to die, but I'm trying to figure out the feeling. It's like, I think I want to go back to when I had something to look forward to, or before my bachelor's graduation. Like, nothing has made me wake up after that. Nothing excites me. Not all the thoughts that I have about my life, and that breaks my heart so much. I wish I could pause time and figure it all out, but I have stuff to do that I don't want to do. I'm trying to figure out what makes me happy and what's reachable right now. I love when I look good. I love trying for my image. I love the whole process of having pretty nails. I love finishing projects and being extremely challenged. Learning hard shit, then creating something with what I learned. I love having connections with those around me. I love being respected and giving my space to talk and have my opinion be valued. I love educating my parents. I love when they ask for advice or look at me as an adult. I love earning my money and playing with it. I love spending my money for the things that make my life better, like a desk, pretty decorations, beauty products. I also like having money and a lot of it. I love encouraging and guiding people to do things and watch them do it. I'm actually very unhappy because I haven't done any of this in a while or not frequently, and I've been ignoring it. I love understanding flaws in complex systems and fixing them. I love the details on data. So pretty much I was trying to find things that I could focus on that could overpower the feeling of dread that I felt. I don't like feeling guilty about the people who I've hurt. I wish I could make it better. I don't know what to do. I don't want to talk to anyone, see anyone, do anything, try, move, exercise, cook, eat. I just don't like a lot of parts of my job. I don't like that people think I might not be adequate enough for product roles. I was getting recruited for that originally. I don't like that. I don't feel comfortable asking questions in a call because I'm afraid of sounding dumb. It keeps me from doing a lot. I don't like that I don't feel empowered to do anything because I don't have the knowledge of many things. I don't like that I have to work 40. Well, that was intense, and this was actually the first time I read that in a long time. And I really, really wanted to demonstrate to you that I was lost and how I felt. And I think it's pretty clear. And I think that really pushed me to go to therapy, and I started this whole therapy journey. And yeah, my first appointment for therapy, I think it was before this. I think it was like very early 2020. And I remember I wanted to go to therapy because I didn't like who I was in relationships. It's like another person took over, and I didn't like that. And I wanted to understand why I was the way that I was if I didn't want to be that way. And more on that coming later, because that relationship was actually with someone named Jose. So in 2019, I felt very lost just in myself, and my job wasn't helping with that. And so it prompted me to go on a self-discovery journey. And so in 2020, in the thick of my quarter life crisis, I discovered who I am. And it's not, como dice, you think you just fell out of a coconut tree? If you understand that reference, you're the real MVP. It's from Kamala Harris's speech. But basically it's saying that I exist in the grand scheme of how I got to be through my parents, through where I was raised. Like, I just didn't pop out of nowhere, right? So I understood that my parents came from Juarez, and I didn't realize up until that point how poor they were. And not in a demeaning way, but like compared to the exposure and the people that I was talking to at 23 years old when I was at Microsoft in Seattle and meeting all these people, I understood how much it meant for me to be there and what I was representing and just everything. I understood everything. It all fell on me in 2020. And how being first gen literally meant starting from scratch in a new country. And I also learned a lot of things through therapy and through coaching. I don't talk about this too openly, but basically I realized that I was raised in a very controlling way. That's what I'll say. And as I was discovering all of this, I was also posting on TikTok because I got an opportunity through a program called Learn on TikTok. Because I gave a TED Talk, I was invited to this STEM girl creator group, which I don't think I was a creator, but fun fact, Fernanda Zulantay was there, Sonia Camacho was there, Katia Sacharreta was there, if you know them, and they're just amazing. And I think Katia is the one who shared the opportunity of Learn on TikTok. And so I joined the program and started getting paid to create content. And since I was going through all of this, I was also sharing not only my career experiences, but my healing journey too. I felt 2017 is when I discovered my passion for being a Latina in STEM. 2019, I realized that being a Latina in STEM was like what it actually meant, and I didn't like it. In 2020, I discovered who I was in the context of the world, like being first generation and all these things. And in 2021 was when I really gained traction on my social media. I went up to 60,000 followers on TikTok, and I got featured on articles because of what I was talking about mental health, talking about being a Latina in STEM, talking about being first generation. So like every topic that I talked about made headlines in some way or another, which was crazy to me because I think what I was saying was not super revolutionary or vulnerable for me because I had gotten to a point where I could talk about it. But I think it resonated with a lot of people, which ultimately led for the content to do well. And I started getting invited to more speaking engagements because I had a TED Talk and had that credibility. So you see how one thing led to another, and suddenly we're in 2021 and 2022. And so, through this, I changed roles, I changed jobs, I changed tech stacks to try to find something that I truly liked. And so I'm trying to figure it out. I'm living life, I'm in my 20s. And so I think a big pivotal moment was in 2023 when I got invited to go to Puerto Rico with Jay Flores. And shout out to all my friends that have been a huge part of my story. And he has this show called It's Not Magic, It's Science. And basically it's a science show that teaches kids science experiments. And it's so cool. He takes it to underrepresented communities. And he's a Latino, so it's so cool for people to see a Latino scientist, right? And so he invited us content creators to a trip to Puerto Rico. First official championship, which if you don't know, it's a robotics competition. And I remembered that I was so happy during that trip because I was traveling, which I love to do, to a place that I've never been in, Puerto Rico, which is so amazing and beautiful and full of beautiful people. And I was with people that I loved and admired and respected me and my point of view. And I was creating content, and it just was the perfect combination of everything where like my body was like, I am so incredibly happy. And so that kind of changed my brain chemistry because I was like, oh my gosh, like I am so happy doing all of these things that it made me realize in the areas that I wasn't happy with, which was my relationship at the time. And it was also my career, a lot of things that I wasn't happy with. And so then after that, I kind of started thinking more seriously about just changing my career. And so in 2024, I do a combination of a lot of things that I really enjoy. The first one is public speaking, like from doing my TEDx to getting invited to a whole bunch of podcasts, to do speaking engagements. I am still doing public speaking. I do content creation, that it all started from my TED Talk, and I really, really enjoy it. And I've done partnerships with MTV for mental health, SAMHSA, a vaccine campaign. I've done a whole bunch of campaigns with not even brands, but like more nonprofits. I create content for Pulso, and it's amazing to be so aligned with an organization. So Pulso is literally an organization that advocates for Latino voices. Like, can you imagine being more aligned than that? And I started an organization called Generation Pionera, which is meant to empower Hispanic and first generation students in topics of leadership, resilience, STEM, mental health, and finances. And I got the opportunity to have the first event in May, and it went awesome. I hired a whole bunch of speakers and content creators, and put the program together with another organization, and it was really, really awesome. Another thing that I do now is coaching. Since I went through my own journey of self-love, self-embodiment, finding my voice, finding my peace, discovering who I am and my purpose, I can now help other women do a lot of those things just based on my experience and my life experience, really. So I think, you can put in the dots how being isolated in 2017 to feeling disappointed in 2019 to having a crisis in 2020 to learning who I am to getting traction and finding things that I actually enjoy to jumping and doing it full time. That's how my time of crisis led to where I am today. And I think once you are tuned into the energy of passion and purpose, your purpose will now come from happiness and love rather than trying to run away from something. I went from exiting survival mode to doing things because I wanted to and out of my heart. And summarize, a lot of the reasons why I'm here today are kind of similar to a butterfly effect. If I didn't feel isolated in 2017, I would have never become passionate about being a Latina in STEM and had the opportunity to do that TED Talk. If I didn't do that TED Talk, I would not have been invited to create content at TikTok. If I didn't create content at TikTok, then I wouldn't do this and I wouldn't do other things. And so just one thing was tied to another. And what I'm hoping for you is for you to share your story, for you to live unapologetically, to take yourself seriously and not to settle. Because you're a big deal. I really mean what you said in the intro. Many times we downplay our stories, our experiences. We think, we're not special and we don't deserve the things that other people have, but we absolutely do. We are a big deal. And what I realized is that my parents lived their whole lives to survive, and I didn't have to do the same thing anymore. I could live to do things that I loved and to have fun. That's the gift that they gave me. The best gift I could give them is for me to be happy, for me to pursue new dreams and keep finding that spark in my life. So if you're going through something hard, just know that it's all meant to serve you. It's all meant to be part of your story. So maybe you can't see it right now, but every single experience that you have had has led you to where you and your ultimate purpose and what's going to make you happy and fulfilled. Thank you so much for listening to this first episode. It is called Empowermente because quite literally a lot of my themes throughout years has been empowerment, empowering myself, empowering the Hispanic community, empowering Latinas in STEM, empowering Latinas, empowering the first gen community, because that's what I learned to do for myself. And it's called Empowermente because I wanted it to be a combination of English and Spanish because, I'm a Spanglish speaker. And I like it because it's like empowermente. A lot of what I'm going to be talking about goes around your mind, your mindset, not just mental health, but your mindset. And that's a little bit why it's called Empowermente. Thank you to every single person that made this possible. I wouldn't have been able to make it without Jose. Not only has he supported me. Remember I told you I was toxic when in that relationship and made me want to go to therapy? So I actually have a relationship with that person now. It seems like it all went for full circle, and everything that I learned throughout those years just made me become a new person. And the same thing happened with him. Like, our wounds were so highlighted in our relationship, and we just learned a lot and are now in the same frequency, which is crazy, and that we found each other in perfect timing. Jose, who is not only my love and my number one motivator and encourager, but he also gets his hands dirty and helps me. He created the intro that you listen to today. He helped me with the whole setup. He set up my lights. The nice background that you see is thanks to his push. I want to thank Danny, my designer, for designing the cover of the podcast and just being there and helping me with that vision and of the brand. I want to thank Vanessa Duran. I worked with her through Designs del Mar for my photo shoot to be able to use it for the podcast cover. Nick Venecia, he's the one who did the photography for the photo shoot. Also, I want to thank Ariola Oyenyi. She is my virtual assistant that has helped push this podcast in terms of content, editing, a lot of the behind the scenes she has helped me do. And all of you for being so supportive, especially if you've been here from the beginning, if you've known me for a long time, I thank you for supporting my journey. And you know, all of those that send me messages, I'm so grateful for them. Oh my gosh. What to expect in the next couple of episodes is gonna be a little bit more structure. I'm gonna have most likely a quote of the day, maybe like a Q&A question where I'm gonna let you all ask me questions that I'll post on the empowermente.co Instagram page. I'm gonna start this as a solo podcast, so probably the first 10 episodes are gonna be by myself, but eventually I'm gonna start inviting people. So if you've already been thinking of somebody you wanna listen to, let me know. And yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to share today. And if you listened this far, please rate the podcast with 5 stars. And so I'm gonna do a little giveaway if y'all share in your story, but not yet. You can just share it because you love me. And I think that is it. If you have any questions, always feel free to DM me on Instagram at empowermente.co or email me at hello@soygina.com. Let me know of any topics that you wanna hear next. And for the next few episodes, I actually have a few different topics. Personal growth in my entrepreneurship journey, lessons that I've learned in the past year because it's almost been a full year of being an entrepreneur, and what is generational wealth and my experiences with having 2 Airbnb listings. And that's what I remember. Thank you for being here. Bye bye bye.